Hi, everybody. So as promised, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm so excited for you all to join us today in our first session of the semester with our Health IT group in collaboration with the Career Development Office. And to kick it off, we are going to talk about two individuals today who went to Rollins and are now working in Health IT. So just to lay some ground rules here, if you aren't speaking, just go ahead and mute yourself to minimize any background noise. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And myself and Michelle will always monitor them so that we can kind of share the questions as they come in. But we will also dedicate some time at the end to answer those questions. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and introduce our two panelists tonight. So first up, we have Sue Song. She is graduated from Rollins in 2016 from the HPM department. Her experience is serving as a consultant with Deloitte to help federal health agencies achieve growth and mission success through strategy building, process and quality improvement, and effective data management/visualization. She currently works as a manager at Cognizant with a focus on data analytics, machine learning, tech strategy, and AI, or artificial intelligence. Some fun facts: she played 4 years of rugby during undergrad. She participated in 2 world records while in Peru, and she has a sourdough starter named Brett from France. Our next panelist is Maria Jolly, who received her MSPH in Environmental Health and Epidemiology. She currently works for Peraton at CDC as a junior project manager within the health informatics team of the Division of Global Health, or Global HIV and TB. Her previous experiences in program management, research, and she has also worked on domestic and abroad files with the CDC, United Nations, CDC, Emory University, and Johns Hopkins. She participated in a high-level UN meeting at the World Health Organization and UN's climate change negotiations. Some fun facts: she loves spending time in nature, and she enjoys eating good food with her friends and family, especially with her husband and bonus child, Jade. So thanks so much, Maria and Sue, for being here tonight. We're excited to, speak more about your experience in Health IT, and as well as answer any questions that our students may have. So to kick it off, our first question is, what initially drew you towards working in the field of Health IT? And Sue, if you would like to take that first.
Yeah, absolutely. So my career in health IT actually didn't start in healthcare in IT at all. I was interested in process and quality improvement while I was at Rollins. I was very focused on joining the CDC. I got my, I got my degree in the policy side of things. Like, I was gung-ho about doing all of that kind of work. Process and quality improvement, finding efficiencies was just my passion. That was my jam. And so when I left Rollins, or rather when I was still at Rollins, I was doing the real program and working at the CDC at the time. I ended up talking to a couple of folks who were in consulting and looked at consulting as a potential field of mine and kind of drew into that world a little bit. So when I left Rollins, I joined Deloitte, working in government and public sector in strategy, and I was very much focused on process and quality improvement. I wanted to apply my certificate in Lean and Six Sigma, and was looking for opportunities kind of all over and everywhere that I could. Unfortunately, at the time, Six Sigma wasn't a big name anymore in government practices. Efficiency, process and quality improvement, all of that was still there, but they were not interested in that particular field. So I remember I was asking my mentors, asking leadership, trying to understand where could I find more of that kind of work? And if it wasn't there, what could I do to make myself more applicable, given the passions that I had for process and quality improvement? And everyone I talked to eventually said, hey, take a look at data analytics. It's the first half of what you do in process and quality improvement based work anyway. You have to gather the information. You have to understand what current process looks like. So data analytics is the new wave. It's where everybody is going to be going, especially in the world of government and public health. you need to get yourself into that field. So from there is when I really started taking a look at data analytics, data visualization, that developed into machine learning and AI and tech strategy. And I left Deloitte to join Cognizant as a manager, specifically to hone in onto that IT healthcare space and to really dive into it. Because once I started doing it, I started to realize like this, I actually really enjoy. And that's kind of how I found my way into healthcare and health IT.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sue. Maria?
Yeah, great. So I was thinking about this question a lot because I feel like I stumbled into health IT. When I was at Rollins, I got a MSPH in environmental health and EPI. And while I was at Rollins, I was debating whether I wanted to go into academia or whether I wanted to go into public health implementation. So I was very much of the mindset that, you know, whatever job I have has to be in the specific public health topic area that I'm interested in for it to feel fulfilling. And as I got farther along in my career, I learned that the day-to-day work of my job is a lot more impactful to my happiness than the topic area, which was a surprise to me. And so as the first job I had after my master's was at the UN Foundation, and that was sort of like a combination of research and project management, implementing public health interventions. And I realized I enjoy the project management aspect of public health a lot more than I do the research and technical side of the house. And so as I continued down, the next job was with the CDC Foundation. And there I was managing a lot of different projects that were not specifically focused on environmental health anymore. And I was managing a few health IT projects that were focused on data modernization and getting our public health systems to be as up to date as a lot of the rest of the systems we use every day are. And it sounds a lot easier than it is to do. And this is, as Sue mentioned, a big need for public health right now to really get up to speed. And so that led me to the current position I have now, which is very much, it is a health IT project. It's basically trying to implement an open source electronic health records for HIV tracking in PEPFAR countries, which are the countries hardest hit by HIV and AIDS. But my role is very much still project management. So I got into public health IT because of my interest in project management, and it is a big need in the IT field as well.
It's great. I really like that you both highlighted your different experiences. It really goes to show that no matter which concentration you're in, health IT is applicable to whichever. So whichever concentration / department you're in at Rollins, health IT, if you have an interest for it, health IT just may be for you. So moving on to our next question, and you both touched upon this just a little bit or very briefly, but could you tell us more about your journey into your career role, how you got into it, like networking or folks you talked to?
Yeah, I can take on this as a first step here. I again really wanted to go into public health because I had been working prior to that at an internship. Before that, I was in the Peace Corps. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. Like public health was it. I was gung-ho about saving the world. Like this was my passion, my career. This is how I was going to change the world. Like all of that really motivated me through my entire program, my entire time at Rollins. And then it was when I was doing the real program, when I was working at the CDC, I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, government work maybe isn't for me. Like, there's a lot of red tape there. It's just reality kind of hit me in the face really hard once I actually started doing the work. When I was in, federal government work in the US, it was totally different from my little municipalidad in Peru, where I could just talk to the mayor real quick and get things done. And I was like, oh, you can't do that in America. Like that doesn't work that way. So when I was at Rollins, when I was working at the CDC, I started working at Emory, the clinic, and just trying out different things at that point, really trying to understand what I could do in process and quality improvement and continue doing in Six Sigma and Lean and keep working in that field. When I joined Deloitte, I remember like the entire interview, every single person I talked to, the only thing I ever talked about was process quality improvement with Six Sigma. And I was convinced that if I only talk about that, I'm going to become that person, and they'll, you know, see something in process and quality improvement, and the first name that would appear would be me. And I could get onto these projects more quickly that way. I was trying to figure out what Deloitte calls it building your brand. What am I known for? What is my passion? And how do I share that story with everyone so I can get into those projects and do that kind of work? And then, of course, that delved into the world of there is no Six Sigma here. The thing that you want doesn't exist. And I remember thinking, like, what have I done? I've gotten, you know, I got a master's degree. I've geared my entire life to working into this process, and it's just not cutting it for me. I can't get the things that I want. And then I recognize, you know, I know what my passion is. My passion is wanting to make things easier for the life of a patient. That's always what I wanted to do. You know, if somebody needs help or somebody needs to do something that they can't do on their own, what does our health system do? Like, how do we address that as a community? What do we do in that sense? And so being at Deloitte and seeing all of the different project opportunities that were out there, all the different things that we were doing in government and public sector related to public health, it was recognizing that wanting one thing didn't mean everything else stopped existing. It just meant that there were different channels I had to go through and different ways of thinking about what I ultimately wanted to do. And so that meant, you know, shifting away from quality improvement, shifting away from quality improvement and focusing it on the data analytics side and the data collection side. Going from there and saying, okay, what can we do to automate? Like, is there a way we can use the tools that are available to CMS, for example, given their data warehouses? What do we do with that information? By continuing to go down these rabbit holes, I was really able to kind of start shifting my understanding of what works and is applicable in this field of health and public health and the work that we do. What can I actually do in that space that is interesting to me so I don't lose that passion? And then go ahead and do it. So little channels, little rivulets kind of all over the place, but ultimately you still get to do the fun work that you want to do, and feel, you know, that your passion is being met in some form or another.
Awesome. Thank you.
I got so caught up in Sue's story. I'm not sure I remember the original question. Is it how did we find our current position?
Yeah. What was your journey to your current position?
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so I mentioned this briefly when answering the first question. So when I was at the CDC Foundation, the way that the CDC Foundation works is it creates public-private partnerships. So getting different players in the private industry to work with the government and or to work with other nonprofit organizations or NGOs, non-governmental organizations. And one of the projects I had when I was there as a project officer was funded by someone who was affiliated with Google. And it was a data modernization project focused on better integrating hospitals and healthcare facilities data with the health department data domestically and with the ambulatory care data. And I knew very little about health IT before joining that project. And my role was pretty much to make sure the wheels were moving, to make sure that the people who needed the funding that we had were getting paid on time, and that the donors who were giving us this money were seeing the deliverables that they expected from giving this large grant. So very much from the project management side, but in managing this project, I got to understand what health IT looks like and what project management in the health IT space looks like. And a recruiter on LinkedIn reached out to me for a recruiter for the current company I work for, Peraton, reached out to me because there was a project within the division of global HIV and TB that needed someone with project management skills. And it seemed like a good fit and a really interesting team and sort of what felt like a mammoth of a task, trying to create an open source software solution for tracking or surveilling HIV in several different countries. So I just wanted to see how it is they're planning to do it. And that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, to add on to that, recruiters on LinkedIn, they're on top of everything. They're also the reason why I'm at Cognizant. A recruiter reached out to me and said, "Hey, there are positions open." I mean, you hear about the Great Resignation and whatever that's happening for the last couple of years now, but keep your LinkedIn's tip-top shape right there because they will reach out.
Yes, I can definitely agree. So moving on to our third question, in what ways did your previous work experience prepare you for your current role? And are there certain skills from your previous roles that have helped you in your current positions?
Sue, I'll take this one first.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just going to piggyback off of what I just said. Yeah, I think there's a lot of transferable skills from all of my previous roles that feed into this one. I mean, I had experience at CDC when I was an ORISE fellow that helped me understand what the government works like before I became a contractor working with a division in CGH as my client. And so that was the first experience that fed into the current position I have. And then the jobs I had in the nonprofit sector were very much project management. And there's a lot of trainings that you have the opportunity to take that you might not necessarily need in the current position you're in now. So when I was at the CDC Foundation, they offered everyone who was at the project officer level the ability to take the project management for development professionals certification, which is like, there's I forget what the private sector one is called, PIP or
PMP.
PMP. Yeah, it's pretty much like the PMP certification, except for development professionals. So nonprofit is often lumped into the development category as well. And that training was very vital for the role I have now. I wouldn't have understood all of the different frameworks for project management that people use to organize the workflows that happen within a project. I don't really do any of the technical side of the IT project. So I don't do any coding or anything like that. So all of the SAS that I learned in Rollins, unfortunately, is not really getting used. But Excel is very much getting used. I took like a 1 or 2 week intensive course when I was at Rollins on how to use Excel well. And that is what I use every single day, and it helps a lot.
I love that you had an Excel intensive course. When I was at Rollins, I remember I gave those classes like to my friends. I remember we were doing something and I can't remember what it was. It was probably econ related, to be totally honest. And I was like, yeah, you just do these quick things, you throw in a quick pivot table, like not a big deal. And the number of people around me who said, oh, I don't know how to do that. Like I don't use Excel in my day-to-day. And I was like, my mind was so blown because I couldn't understand how you did anything in data if you didn't have Excel or like understand how to use Excel. And I remember I was like, hey, let me give you like a quick crash course. I'll throw together a presentation. I'll show you kind of the basic things. And then it sort of kept growing and other people kept inviting other people. I remember I ended up taking that, I forgot what room it was. It's that downstairs room that has like the big auditorium thing. And I like gave a presentation and in the following semester broke that down into like a beginner versus intermediate versus advanced course. Cause I was like, everyone's level of Excel understanding is wildly scattered. There are some folks who didn't know that you had tabs, like they just knew that you had a sheet. And there were others who were like, I get the pivot table. I'm trying to understand, Power Pivot and all these other, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is wild. So I remember being like, why am I giving this course? This is madness. I'm not that great at it. But with time, you end up just learning things along the way, picking up a little thing here or there from class. A lot of what I knew from Excel was due to my Peace Corps work. And I was doing, community diagnostics and keeping all of my data in Excel and learning to fidget with them and learn with them. So very similar to Maria, like all of the work that I had done prior to Rollins, through Rollins, and then into kind of the world of consulting has definitely shaped and has been extremely helpful for me. I know a lot of folks, especially when you finish with like undergrad and you're not quite sure what to do and you're, kind of spinning your wheels and trying to sort it out. I did a similar thing. It's one of the reasons why I joined the Peace Corps. I was like, I can't figure it out. I don't know. I'm going to go do some good in another country for a couple of years and take some time to think it out and see what I want to do. And in that time, I didn't realize just how many soft skills I was developing in terms of, how do you interact with a group of people who are in political positions, for example? How is that different from engaging with members of the community? How do you determine who a stakeholder is versus like all of those things that you just learn from doing something all came very, very handy when I started my world in consulting because you're doing the exact same thing with your clients, just on a different scale, different level of professionality, of course, like all of those things, minor things change, but the core skills that you develop from working in group projects, for example, and trying to understand how to deliver within a team, those are all very, very transferable skills. And they're things you need. And honestly, you need it before you start your professional career in a lot of ways. Like you need to be able to know how to interact with different people and do all of those soft skill things. And then once you have like a base understanding of it in the world of career-wise, professional-wise, you refine that. But developing is really hard if it's your kind of like first career out of grad school. Trying to develop those soft skills is a little bit more difficult. You definitely want to take the time while you're in grad school, while you're working in different clubs or in classes to really hone in on those skills and make sure that you're getting sort of the basics of it so that you can refine it in like in your career, in your professional world. I was the Peace Corps volunteer for a couple of years. I worked as a intern of sorts, I guess. I didn't get paid, so I guess that's what you would call an intern while I was at a hospital prior to Rollins. So, actually being in patient space, understanding how administratively a building works or a healthcare system works and kind of the expansion of all of that. And then that was where I really understood like what process and quality improvement looked like, what operational excellence looked like. And when I was at Rollins, that's really where I started to hone in again on that process and quality improvement work that I enjoyed. When I was at Deloitte, and very similar to what Maria said, like different companies really want to push certifications on you. They want to know, give me a little piece of paper that shows me you know how to do this work. At the very least, that you are able to pass an exam that says you have a basic understanding of this. So while I was at Deloitte, I got my PMP, my project management professional or whatever that is from PMI, the Institute. I got cloud certified through AWS, through Amazon. There were opportunities to do like UiPath and automation. So learning doesn't stop while you're at like after Rollins. There's just so many different opportunities. There's like Udemy classes, things that you can do online to continue to develop that. With all that in mind, very similar to what you're doing at Rollins, you don't want to waste your time doing whatever it is. Like you want to know what the purpose of that piece of paper is so that you can apply it. And that's a lot of what I was doing while I was at Deloitte was understanding in data analytics, what are the things that I actually need to know? How do I, use an Excel or create an Excel dashboard that actually shows this? Do I dive into Tableau? Do I need to know R or Python or figure out these other languages in order to be able to communicate the architects? I'm not a coder. There was no way. I tried really hard to learn R and Python and to try and figure it out. And I was like, man, I'm worse at this than I was at SAS. And SAS was like the simplest language. And like, it just wasn't going to happen. But at the same time, I understood, I know just enough. I know just enough to say, hey, this is possible or this isn't possible. Or I know just enough to say, hey, you as the expert who does coding, or who is an architect, this is not the worst question to ask you whether or not something is feasible or possible for a client. That was all I really wanted to know because I knew I did not want to go into that field in particular, like be a SME in a particular language or platform or whatever it is. But I knew enough that I was like, okay, if I wanted to, I can take the opportunities to continue to grow in that field. But all I know right now is what I need to continue to work with my teams and my projects.
That's awesome. Thank you both for answering that question. I just wanted to kind of highlight too that Rollins does offer an Excel class So if you are able to, I highly encourage it. Super easy, and in fact, it will help you later down the road. Let's say if you're applying for a consultant position and they ask you to rate your MS Excel skills, you can put, hey, I did a project for this class. So anything helps. So moving on to the, yes.
Sorry, it's just wild how far like HPM or just Rollins in general, the school sees what is necessary in the real world and they will adapt. Like, I love that there's an Excel course. It just makes me so happy.
Yeah, and the good thing is that you can take as many credits as you like, and it's just one flat fee. But anyways, so my next question is, do you have any tips for the interview process or for searching for health IT jobs? And how would you describe the interview process for careers in health IT?
Yeah, I mean, just to talk about my own experience, when I graduated from Rollins, I knew I was interested in consulting after having talked to a bunch of consultants and kind of seeing what they were able to do in the career and profession that they were able to pick projects and so forth. So I knew I was interested in consulting. I think consulting as an interview is very different from most other interviews. Like, you have your behavioral, but you also have a case interview, which is not something that a lot of people know unless you know that you need to do a case interview and you need to prep for that. It's very different. I don't know if Rollins provides any of that kind of like case interview stuff. I know Deloitte, for example, does like practice case interviews and they have sessions available. So there is that. I know the Goisleta, the business school, does quite a bit of case interview prep. So again, being at Rollins, you have access to all of those things. There are books you can buy, etc. I will say with consulting, case interview, and behavioral, both of them are pretty much equal and on par. Like, you can't have one without the other. It's not like they weigh your responses to a case interview more than the behavioral or the behavioral more than the case. Both of them are to really understand who you are. So if you are interested in the field of consulting, whether it's in healthcare, IT, or whatever it is, if you're just interested in consulting, take a look at like what's available to you. Do the research, go to YouTube videos and look at what they have for practices. And it might not be public health related, it might not be IT related, but the process and the critical thinking and how you describe what you do is very much the same across whatever case interview happens. They always say, like, the answer doesn't matter. The answer does matter. You can't give something that's like wildly off track with no reasoning behind it. With all that being said, it's not as important as the process of you getting to that answer. Like, they're trying to see how you break down questions and how you think through things. And same with the behavioral. A lot of that is to understand, if we were to put you in front of a client right now, what would you be like? What kind of energy do you exude? Again, the soft skills part of things, like how are you interacting with the interviewer? How are you responding? Are you inquisitive? There's a million things. And even, I will say, having been on the other side of being the interviewer or looking at the responses from interested applicants and so forth, I oftentimes cannot understand for the life of me what is going through leadership's head when they're going through applications and saying yes to one and no to another. Like, I've read them and I'm going, why? Why would you say no to that person? Or why would this person be considered for like the third interview versus that person? It just doesn't make sense to me. So there's something on the executive level that I'm clearly not there yet. I don't get that reasoning. At the same time, it's very clear that folks who go through that process, every single one of them shows like true passion for the work that they're interested in doing. They show that they're prepared for conversations, that they have done the research into the company or whatever it is. Like, there are some things that are very standard across those who do well in interviews or who do well when they reach out and network. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think Sue really covered a lot of bases. I will say though, I was looking through, I have like a resume folder on my Google Drive that has all of the different job applications that I've put out there and different resumes that I've crafted. And okay, so for everyone on the call, I graduated Rollins in 2018. 2018, and I have applied to 30 different unique organizations, which I don't think is an extremely high number. So just, know that after you graduate, it's going to be a process. And you can start as early as you like. When I think I started a little too early. I think I started around like February or March of the spring I was graduating, and I got a few interviews, and they were like, "We need someone sooner than May." So there's a downside to starting too early. You might be the right fit for an opportunity, but the timing isn't there. So it's part of it is a numbers game, just to get your foot in the door to be interviewed. And Sue outlined the interview process for Deloitte really, really well. I will say my consulting firm does not have as intense of an interview process. And so not all consulting firms are that intense in their interview process. So I've had some opportunities where, I would have an interview with a recruiter who would just make sure that I actually check off the bare minimum requirements for the job. And then if I pass that interview, I get moved to the hiring manager, and then maybe I'll have like a meet and greet with a few people on the team as well. So they're not just gauging that you have the skills needed to do well in the job, but oftentimes employers are trying to make sure that the way that you interact with people, or the way that you problem solve, or the way that you communicate is a good fit for the team that you're joining. So don't take it personally if you don't hear back. You could have been the most qualified person in the world, but there was just something that you will never know why they decided to go with someone else. But yeah, research is so important. Make sure you really understand the opportunity that you're interviewing for. And if you don't understand it, ask as many questions as you can before you get to the interview, whether you're asking that to the recruiter or to whoever reached out to you to set up that interview, or to somebody else that you find on LinkedIn who works for that team. I've done that, just if you can find somebody who will be able to give you some more insight than you have right now, really take that opportunity before you get to the interview so that you can speak well and really speak to your strengths that make you a good fit for whatever position you're looking into.
Yeah. And to add on to what Maria said about a numbers game, like it really is a numbers game. You just need to put yourself out there continuously, have your most updated resume, keep honing and refining it. Deloitte's interview process was intense. There was a behavioral, there was a case, there was, talking to a whole bunch of people, etc. I have gone on interviews where they've like flown me and they've had me stay at a hotel, and they had me go through like a round robin where I was running around trying to figure out who's who. And it was very clear that I was the last person that they were talking to me on a Friday, and they did not want to be there anymore. And they were like just trying to get through the questions. And I was like sitting there thinking, this is so unfair. Like, you're not giving me a chance because you're exhausted, and it's not my fault that you booked me at this time. But at the same time, it was like, okay, maybe this isn't the company for me then. Like, they're not willing to listen. They're not willing to give me a chance. I can't really do anything about that. So I'll just give the best I can do, keep moving on. And so you keep throwing in your applications, you keep talking to people, you keep networking. I think a big one is like making sure that even if you are throwing your hat in the ring 100 times, every single time you throw that hat in the ring, it is with you being fully researched. It is with you being, you're not sitting there being like, hi, here's my resume. It's, hi, I'm interested in your company. I have done the research into it. This is my background. Like, you're giving your spiel, you're giving your elevator pitch every single time to a person, because you never know who's going to turn around and go, you know what, I like that resume. Let's move on to your next piece. And so you don't want to throw those opportunities away, no matter how many of them might respond with nothing. I don't even know how many resumes I have that are just sitting in people's inboxes somewhere and just haven't even been deleted because they never took the time to look at it. Like, that happens.
That's really great advice, Sue and Maria. I would also like to add to have like a master resume, so then that way it becomes easier. Like if you have, let's say, 3 different job postings and they're all requiring some PM, project management, or data analytics piece, you can always kind of copy and paste from your master resume and tailor it to the specific job posting that you're interested in. So that's probably the only advice that I'll give on this call. But for our next question, it's more talking about the hard and soft skills that folks need for a particular job. So what hard and soft skills do you think are needed to integrate healthcare, business, and technology?
Sue, do you want to take a stab at this first?
Yeah, I think when I'm thinking of hard skills, if you're looking into health IT, it never hurts to know about different types of platforms or systems, to take a couple of courses like an Udemy course on like Amazon Cloud and what is cloud technology, what is kind of going on, and staying on top of sort of the modern things that are happening. IT is changing every minute, right? Like things are happening yesterday that I should be aware of and I'm not, because I didn't realize just how big that change was. They're constantly changing, they're constantly updating. So I subscribe to a bunch of different things online, whether that's with like CMS, for example, and just making sure that I'm up to date on policies that are going through. Different, I don't even know. I was like, podcasts. I have like different podcasts that I listen to that give you little snippets every day about like 10, 15 minutes of new things that are happening. Just trying to stay on top of the news as much as possible in the field of health IT. I know news can be draining, so I don't try to stay on top of all of that because that stuff is just crazy. Like what's going on with Russia has been blowing my mind. But like when it comes to health IT, just trying to be able to like digest as much of it as you currently have, especially if it's in a field or with an agency or something that you're interested in working with. Staying on top of it, it shows that you are, one, aware that information is changing, and two, like interested in it, and you want to stay on top of it, and you want to engage with other people who are the same. So having that kind of information, just, being aware of it is always really important. Having some, what we're mentioning with like Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint in general, especially if you're a consultant, PowerPoint, Word documents, and Excel sheets are the three things that you will use constantly. And it seems silly, but the amount of time, I know consultants joke about PowerPoint decks all the time. It's not a joke. Like it really is make or break in so many different ways. I think of it less as like a PowerPoint and more data visualization, right? How do you take this information, chop it down in a way that an executive who has 5 minutes to give you their time can read through it, understand the main points, and walk away knowing what you came out with it? Like they understood the information you gave them, as opposed to having to wade through junk and trash data and whatever else it is to try and figure out what you're trying to tell them. Microsoft PowerPoint is a big one. It's not just throwing bullet points onto a slide. It's also not just making pretty shapes or like animations off to the corner and things like that as well. It really is a way of showing what information is most important and making sure you're directing the flow of information to the person who's reading it. So very powerful tool if it's used correctly. Excel, obviously, we just talked about that. Any sort of language that you might be interested in when it comes to coding. Again, I know many of you probably are doing SAS, which is great. I had to, at one point during my Deloitte career, pick up my SAS book again and run through it because I had to do some data analysis on SAS systems. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't remember any of this. And I was like, Proc Freak. I just remember it because it was really funny. I don't know what else it does. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is insane. But I'm not a coder. Again, I just know enough to say, hey, this is possible in this field. Or if I need to find something, I don't want to bother the architects or the coders who are actually doing the work. I'll just do a quick search or a quick inquiry myself and be able to pull it up. Those are the kinds of things that you want to learn in sort of hard skills. And then soft skills are things that you're already picking up while you're at Rollins. It's knowing how to work in a team. It's knowing how to communicate your information. A big part is also just knowing how to manage your own time. If someone told me my Outlook calendar would be my live or die and that I would have 8 meetings in a row at the same exact hour, and I have to sit there and figure out which one is the most important one, like which one do I actually have to join, having all of that kind of awareness of, what you need to get done, whether or not something will be able to get you to that point, and who do you communicate with to make sure that happens. Those aren't things that you pick up like in a classroom. There's no HPM 101 course on managing your Outlook calendar. Maybe there should be, but with that being said, like, you need to be able to manage your own time and be able to be your own advocate, build your own brand, and develop it in that sense. And I think that is a really important soft skill that a lot of people don't recognize as something that they need to continue to develop throughout their professional career.
Yeah, I think Sue really covered a lot of it. I'll just add one thing. One other soft skill that I think is really vital for this field is flexibility and adaptability, because things are constantly changing. So I've been in my current role now for a year and change, like maybe a year and 3 or 4 months. And the first year I spent becoming an expert in one project management software solution that we're using. And as of yesterday, I learned that we have started to use one that works better for our needs, and we might be scrapping the old one altogether. So, I created a guidebook for everybody. And I think we are now just starting to get really to the expert level in this one solution. And we're going to have to shift to the other one because it works better, and we should. But, if you're somebody who gets flustered or has a hard time adapting to change, that will be something you struggle with a lot in this field, because it's just constantly changing all the time.
Yeah, and to add on to that, definitely patience is a big one. If you are a data expert, right? Like, if you are the coder, if you're the expert who is building out the guidelines and doing all of those things, you need patience when you're interacting with the other side, which is the business side of the world with health IT, right? Business side doesn't understand the language. It doesn't understand the details and the processes and the intricacies of like an IT modernization, for example. They're not going to understand. So oftentimes architects or data scientists or whoever it is, they need to know that they're speaking a different language, and they need to slow it down and understand from the other point of view and have the patience to explain it. And the other side is the same way, right? Like, as someone who doesn't do the coding, who doesn't understand all the intricacies and requirements of a process, who looks at an architecture map and I'm like, there are a lot of symbols in here that I've never seen before, I don't know what that means. It's really easy to get frustrated and be like, well, I just want this thing. Why can't we make it happen? To stop and be patient and say, okay, there are a million other things that are happening, and there must be a reason why. So maybe I need to communicate and have a conversation with someone to say, hey, I think this is important. Give information for why I think this is important, and hear from them. Is that something that's being included? Is it not? Health IT is still in the world of development, right? Like, a lot of the projects that I do, whether it's government or private industry, a lot of folks are just learning to modernize their current IT infrastructure. They went from something that they started doing 50 years ago. My current project, they started their system 50 years ago. Every single time something new happened, they created a little widget and went, oh, okay, we'll just fix this one patch, we'll patch it. Now they're doing an entire IT modernization where they're taking a look at their entire system and saying, oh, nothing is going to work in 5 years. Like, all of our systems are built on a platform that's actually not going to exist. They have also upgraded. There are all these changes. We're going through all of these ancillary applications being like, who made this? Why is this even here? And trying to figure out like where all the details are falling in. And this is in the year 2022, right? Like, this is still happening. When I was working as an intern, we just went from paper to computers in this giant healthcare system. And my mind was blown that we had literally rooms and stacks of physical papers with patient names and information on it that was being scurried around and carried around like freaking pigeons holding onto things and flying off to where they needed to be. And I remember thinking to myself, this is wild. Like, how does information travel this way? We are one hospital within a system that has 40 hospitals across the West Coast. How are we still doing paper? It's the year whatever. I was like, this is crazy. But at the same time, government and private sector, they're still developing, they're still sorting things out, especially in government. Like, they're still trying to understand how cloud will actually work given all of the data that they have available. There's still concerns around security, even though we know that cloud can be very secure depending on, what instance they're using, et cetera. Like there are parameters in place, but the people who are running everything behind the scenes, this is all still very new to a lot of them, and they're learning to adapt just as much as everyone else is. So patience is a really, really big one for anybody working in health and IT space.
Awesome. Thanks so much for those tips. So now we want to open the floor to you all and say, and ask if y'all have any questions. I actually see one in the chat from Jason who asks, can you please share some of those health IT resources? And I think this is, Sue, when you were talking about staying up to date with news. I personally stay up to date with like Becker's Healthcare Review, so I'm not sure if that's one of them, but if you could expand on that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to go through kind of a list of things that sort of pop up on my phone. There are different apps that are available that go into like bright spots of health IT. Let me pull up a couple of things. Marilyn, Michelle, I'll share them with you. Have like 2 or 3 of them that I use, and that way if we can share them to the group, I think that would be lovely.
Sure, yeah. Molly, do you have any resources that students can look into for health IT?
I mean, not off the top of my head. I will say just if I think I'll maybe this is better answered after the call and we can email some out all together compiled.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds great. And just to let everybody know, the session will be recorded and uploaded to 1220. So if you ever want to look back at the recording, you can go ahead and do so. I'm also putting up the contact information for Maria and Sue through LinkedIn in case y'all want to connect with them and talk more about health IT. But if there are no questions in the chat, or if anybody wants to come off mic and ask a question, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm gonna go and look at my other question that I have already made. But if anybody has any questions, just feel free to jump in.
I have a question for the group, actually. Are most of y'all, what year is this? Second years now? Is that, I know the career fair is coming up for a lot of folks. And one thing that we had been talking about previously is like, how do you maximize what you get out of kind of the things that Rollins provides? And the career fair is a big one. When I was at Deloitte and doing a lot of the recruitment, I remember one of the big things that Deloitte always did was the career fair and preparing for it. So just like as a bit of advice for folks is, if you've never gone to a career fair before, you're not quite sure what to expect. If you weren't able to make it last year, for example, or if this is your first year and you're taking a look at what's available, I would highly recommend having, for example, resumes printed out, and like having those available so that you can highlight what your experience and background looks like, especially if you get into a conversation with someone about like what they do. You can pull out your resume and say, hey, let me refer you to some of my background, leave that copy with them so that they have something to look at and refer to, and it's not just a random thing that you come up with. I would also recommend, if you are able to get a look at who's going to be at career fair prior to going to career fair, I don't know if there's like a list of all of that available to you. Take a look at what companies or what organizations are going to be available. Do a brief Google check on them. It's like you're about to go meet somebody on a blind date. You're not going to go in there without knowing anything. You're going to Google them. You're going to LinkedIn them. You're going to see what you can find on that person or on that organization so that you have a rough background. The idea is to make yourself a little bit different, right? To come in prepared, to make sure that people leave going, oh, I remember that name. Or at the very least, when they look at you later during the interview and be like, didn't we talk before? And you would have a better idea of that. I think it's also really helpful if you have questions that you're not going to be able to get from just Googling, right? Like whenever I did the Deloitte or the career fair at Deloitte, and someone would ask me a question about Deloitte, and I'd look at them and think to myself, if you literally Google Deloitte or went on Deloitte.com, that information is available to you in like the front page. It's a little bit frustrating on my end to be like, oh, you didn't look at us at all. Like, it's kind of weird that you're coming in now with those questions when you have your phone in your hand. You could just Google that real quick. So just putting it out there. I know everybody is different and like different recruiters are different ways, but I think it's kind of like a way to make yourself stand apart a little bit from the floods of people that are going to interact with this person. So just gonna put that out there for y'all.
I would also say, like having questions for them. I think you touched upon this too, not only during career fairs, but also during like the actual interviews or even informational interviews. So then that way folks can remember you, and they'll be able to say, hey, like so-and-so is, they asked me this interesting question. So it's really great to have those prepared and basically do your research beforehand, before coming into the career fair interviews, whatever it may be. And Molly, do you have any tips or advice to share for career fairs or either informational interviews or meet and greets?
Sure, yeah. I saw someone posted in the chat, any advice on negotiating salaries for roles in the private sector? Yeah, so I'll talk about those two things a little bit. So I would say, yeah, we touched on this briefly earlier, but really, really, LinkedIn is your best friend, especially in this market with the Great Resignation. I feel like a lot of places are hiring. And if you can make yourself stand out in any way, it makes their job easier to try and find somebody who is qualified and passionate. So there was one job that I really, really wanted after graduating from Rollins, and I felt like I was a really great fit for it as well. So I formally applied online on whatever the portal was that the organization had. And then I found who would be my direct supervisor in this role on LinkedIn and reached out to her there, sent her an email and let her know that I have formally applied, but I just want to reach out to say, express my interest and just very briefly in a few sentences why I'm qualified for the role. And that really caught her eye, and I got an interview within a few days. So, you can get creative with the way that you network. And if you're not at the point where you found something or an organization that you're extremely passionate or gung-ho about, just peruse LinkedIn to see what it is that people are doing and what path they took to get there. And a lot of people really love to talk about themselves. So if you just send them a message on LinkedIn and let them know that you're really impressed with their career and would love to have an informational interview, that is a lot easier of an ask than asking for a job, right? Because you're just asking for advice, which people love to dole out, and it doesn't cost a thing. So it's, again, a numbers game. So I'd say for every 5 to 10 people that I reached out to without having, a prior connection with on LinkedIn, I get maybe 2 or 3 responses. But those responses gave me so much information about the organizations they worked for, what the hiring process is like, what the company culture is like, which is also really hard to get a sense of outside of talking to people who work there. So really, really can't stress enough, use LinkedIn. For negotiating salaries in private sector roles, there's a lot of websites out there that have very detailed information about salary ranges, Glassdoor, Indeed, there's others. But I mean, this requires you to be a little shameless, but I've also, in those informational interviews, asked people, what do you think is a fair salary range for someone with my experiences and for someone applying to this role? And, that doesn't really, there's nothing, asking that question is kosher, is what I'm trying to say. There are laws that protect you or protect them if they were to tell you. So you really should get a very clear idea, or as clear of an idea as you can, as to what a fair salary is for the role that you're looking at. And oftentimes employers ask for a range. So I always try to give a range that's that ends at the salary that I'm comfortable at. So don't give a range that ends at a salary that you would not be satisfied with. So that, you know, if they go to the bottom of your range, you're still happy. So those are some advice I have.
Yeah. And to add on to that LinkedIn advice, I have received a lot of folks who cold call, like they reach out to me via LinkedIn and say, hey, saw your background, was interested in what you do, would love to chat. I've also gotten people who just said, hey, here's my resume. Can I have a job? So the people who sent me a resume, I'm going to go ahead and send that to a recruiter. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to review it. I'm not going to have a conversation. They never asked me for anything. So just ship that on to the recruiter and say, did my part, you know, hope you get someone reach out to you. Good luck. Of the people who have done that, 0 have gotten hired from my company because there was no conversation, right? Like I had no idea who they were. They were just trying to, again, play the numbers game, but play it badly. They were trying to just get things out there. And I was like, that's just a waste of your time. The people who reached out to me and said, hey, you know, this is your background. This is my background. We share a passion for X. We both graduated from Rollins, like little things like that. And they just want to engage and they want to talk to me about what it is that I do, what I'm interested in, like how do they kind of grow from that sense, et cetera. And if it ends with them saying, you know what, I think I would love to work in a company like that, my response has always been, send me your resume, let's work through it. Let's see what we can do to make your resume highlight the pieces that a recruiter is actually going to take a look at and not just information that you've given. And I've gotten a lot of resumes where I'm like, this is terrible. We got to start from the beginning, but it's someplace, right? Like I want to work with those people who are reaching out to give me more information, to ask for more information, to do things that aren't just a simple Google search. Those are the folks that I want to invest time in because I know that they're actually, you know, committed to it. They want to do the work there. They might not get hired at Cognizant. They might not get what they're ultimately looking for, but I think it still helps to be able to tailor your resume to know what it is that they're looking for and what to do in your like next conversation, for example. And in terms of negotiating salaries, I find that so funny because there is a difference between like what you value for yourself and what your actual market value is, right? Like I'm confused why my company doesn't pay me millions of dollars every year. I'm clearly worth it. Like I want that money, but my market value is not like Jeff Bezos levels, right? That's just not going to happen. I do the research. I talk to my peers. For example, I ask people around me to say, hey, you're entering into this field, or you just got a job here, or, you know, like give me a rough range. So I know it's still taboo in most places to talk about what your exact salary is, which I would argue only gives power to the company. Everybody should be talking about their salary as much as they possibly can so that you're able to compare and actually know whether or not you're being undervalued, if you're at the top of that bubble, like where you are. But to approach a conversation to say, hey, roughly, like if you were to give a band, if you were to give a range, what would it look like as someone who's just starting in this field, or as someone who has this background, or, you know, like how does that work? I will say going from Rollins to Deloitte, there was no negotiating. Myself and then the people I worked with, we all kind of tiptoed around it and we're like, can we negotiate? Can we ask them? And I think 2 or 3 of us actually went and said, is there room for negotiation? And their response was no. Like you negotiate next year, but this is our starting salary. Like that's not something that we currently do. It was a good salary, so I was like, that's fine. I'll go ahead and accept it. But year after year, every time I gained a year of experience, I had a conversation with at least 2 members of leadership, no matter where it was what role I was in, whatever I was doing. I always had a conversation with leadership to say, hey, this is my understanding of the current market. This is my understanding of where I stand in that market. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I should be within this band. And if I leave, I'm going to ask for more. I always added, this is like it's also like imposter syndrome is very, very real. So whenever I'd go into the kind of the next range of whatever promotion or whatever it is, I'd take my current salary and I'd be like, if I added $30,000 to it, would I be much happier in that instance? Do I think I deserve that? Does the skills that I have built, like, would someone be willing to pay that number? And I was like, I don't know, we'll see. So every time I talked to a recruiter, I would always add whatever I thought this is my comfortable zone, I'd add about $10,000 to $15,000 on top of it, be like, can you meet me here? And then negotiate in between, right? But exactly as Maria was saying, I never asked for less than what I wanted. If I got that bottom range of a number and it was like, but I put that number there, the only person I should be kicking is myself. So you always ask for the range that's slightly over and then negotiate in between.
That's really great advice. And if y'all want to ever practice your negotiation skills, go ahead and take the business school class that I put in the chat. I cannot recommend it enough. It's a really great class. The professor is awesome. But yeah, I mean, that's really great advice. I want to thank you both for joining us tonight, and to our students for joining us as well. We hope that you go ahead and connect with Sue and Maria. And if you have any questions, just feel free to let us know. But thank you again for joining us, and have a good rest of the night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.